Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be answering the question, what is hyperspace? This video is primarily going to be targeted at new players to X-Wing or players who don't even play X-Wing that are just curious a little bit about the formats. I'm going to be talking about what the hyperspace format is and why you should be aware of it and how it matters and who it works better for. And also we'll talk about some of the pros and cons that go along with having a format like hyperspace. So before I dive into this, though, I do want to remind you that there is still time to enter to win the latest giveaway. I'm giving away a Force FX lightsaber in the form of an Amazon gift card that, in theory, you could just use on whatever you want. You don't have to get a lightsaber. All it takes to enter to win that is to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. It's as simple as that. There's more details for that on Crabbok.com. That should actually be announcing the winner here in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that after the beginning of March. All right, so what is the hyperspace format? In short, it's kind of like a standard format like you've seen in other games like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone, where you eventually have a lot of product and you need to say, okay, we're going to group this smaller section of product, usually newer product, off as a standard format, and everything else will be an extended format. You still have an extended format in X-Wing 2nd Edition, and the hyperspace is basically the standard format. It's not exactly called standard, though, because there are some differences between this and what would normally be the standard format, and we're going to talk about those. And some people really like the hyperspace format, some people don't, and some people are indifferent. So we're going to talk about that. Basically, what it is all about and what it contains is the newest stuff. The ships that have come out in 2nd Edition that have a 2nd Edition blister pack or booster box, and the new 2nd Edition core set. For the most part, there are a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's basically all the newest stuff. And I think it's those exceptions that change it from what we would normally consider a standard format. And so we're going to talk about that. First thing I do want to point out also is that if you're using the official app builder, it's built right into that. So I'm going to kind of show you guys, kind of do a walkthrough. When you load up the official X-Wing squad builder, you are going to have your different formats. First one you're going to see is extended. Now, hyperspace is kind of like an evolution of what used to be the 2nd Edition format, or just the X-Wing 2.0 format. And that one was basically just the core set and just the expansions. They've evolved hyperspace because we now have a second wave out, and they've allowed it to influence some of the stuff that comes in conversion kits as well. So, but they haven't updated it on their official squad builder yet, because when you click on hyperspace format, it still says the 2nd Edition game mode is an ideal introduction to new players to X-Wing. It includes only those components found in the 2nd Edition core set and ship expansions. So that was maybe true of the 2nd Edition game mode, but that's not exactly true of the hyperspace format. One example is like if we were to go ahead and say Rebel Alliance for hyperspace format, I'll log in later. We'll notice that we can include the YT-1300 freighter, and that was not a ship expansion. So that's one of the differences between hyperspace and what was originally that standard 2nd Edition only format. And that was really a format that was only there to just get people playing the brand new product. Hyperspace is a natural evolution of that to balance the factions a little bit more, to give everybody more stuff, because it was really unfortunate for certain factions that might have only had 1 or 2 ships available. So the Rebel Alliance, like, hey, you know what, we only really have X-Wings for you guys, Y-Wings, and to a limited extent the U-Wing, because only half of the U-Wings, only those 2nd Edition U-Wings. So, which is really strange to me, but it's only the U-Wings that were in the Saw's Renegades pack, not the U-Wings that were part of the ship beforehand, which are in the conversion kit, right? And the T-65, you got almost everybody, but you've got the 1300 freighter, which was not an expansion. That was straight out of the conversion kit. So you are able to, get ships that aren't available through the hyperspace format, but it's a small selection for every different faction. Like if we go to change faction, stay. All right, change faction, leave. There we go. Let's try it again with the Empire, and we'll take a look and see. We'll log in later. And these are all available now. Did I choose? This is not standard. I chose extended Empire. And next. log in later. There we go. So we've got 4 ships. Again, this is pretty much standard across the board. You've got your TIE Advanced, your TIE Reaper, your TIE LN, and your TIE Striker. The Reaper was 2.0 in Wave 14. The Striker is getting ready to re-release in Wave 3. Once Wave 3 comes out, or with each new wave, you're likely to see the new stuff be added to Hyperspace immediately or hopefully shortly thereafter. But the idea with Hyperspace is to just keep all the factions balanced. So let's talk about some of the pros for this game mode, because I think there's definitely a few. One of the main pros that you're going to notice is that this is good for new players for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons it's good for new players is that there's less stuff to consider. You don't have to think about 1,000 different expansions when you're doing your stuff. You really only have to think about, well, what's out right now. I only have to worry about maybe 4 different ships from every given faction. So there won't be as many options. It'll be less confusing. I mean, if you think about X-Wing 1.0 had 14 waves of product, and a lot of those waves had multiple ships per faction. So there's a lot of ships and a lot of upgrades that did make it over into 2.0. Not everything, but a lot of that stuff did. So imagine being a new player coming into X-Wing saying, oh, okay, well, I'll try this out, and playing Extended and be like, okay, I show up to a tournament. Nobody has the same ships. Everything is completely different. And even those few people that are, you're flying a YT-1300 and you're flying a YT-1300, they're totally different. Different pilots, different upgrades, built differently. Oh, and for different factions. So it could easily become overwhelming. So this definitely limits the available amount of ships, which is potentially better for a new player. One of the other things is they don't want new players to effectively be forced to buy too much stuff. Using only the stuff from these expansions is good, but also it means you don't have to, like, if everybody's flying E-Wings or whatever, you don't now have to go to eBay and try to find E-Wings that maybe aren't available in your local store. And it's not healthy for a game to force people into eBay to buy components to play the game competitively. It's just not a proper business model, and it makes sense. Not everybody's got a whole lot of 1.0 stuff left on the shelf. A lot of stores still have some of it, but for the longest time, especially with as many waves of product that X-Wing had, there was always something that was out of print. For a long time, it was the Most Wanted packs were out of print. Then the K-Wings were out of print. ARC 170s, or, there was always some ship that people really wanted that was in demand that was out of print. You couldn't get it anymore because they got bought up right away or they didn't make that many, and right now when new people are coming into this game wanting to get everything, in a lot of cases, you're going to have to turn to eBay, and they don't want that to happen. So let's make a format that just doesn't require any of the old 1.0 stuff to be brought into the game. So I figured, all right, that kind of makes sense. I get that. Another thing that this does is this allows them to, as far as pros are concerned, this allows them to address a tighter meta game. What that means is they can look at what people are doing. If everybody is if one type of list or one type of build is dominating what everybody's playing it in tournaments, all the tournament winners are running Boba Fett, for example. Well, then the next 6 months or so when they update Hyperspace, because it's going to be a fluid format that will be updated, and we actually just recently had an update as well. They're going to have the ability to say, okay, well, you know what? Now this ship is no longer Hyperspace. They have the flexibility to be able to do that, and they can say, well, this ship is no longer legal in the Hyperspace tournament format. So if all the players are running Boba Fett and winning, and let's say for a whole year, every tournament that 90% of the top 8 players are running Boba Fett, well, they could potentially make Boba Fett no longer Hyperspace legal and see what impact that has. Maybe people are now forced to try out different ships, and that can effectively keep the game healthy. Because one of the things that was a problem with X-Wing First Edition was that there were certain things that were deemed really, really powerful, and they would dominate the meta. And you either had to fly that exact list or fly something specifically to counter that list, but it was almost a rock, scissors, paper mentality where everybody's running rock. So you have to run paper. but then somebody comes along and runs scissors and throws everything off, and they wanted there to be more of it. There's more than just 3 ships in this game. There's a lot of ships in this game. And so they want everything to be viable. And that's a really tough goal. They want to shoot for that as best as they can. And the worst case scenario is when there's only one thing that's viable. And this allows them to change that. And another thing is this allows them to actually balance the factions against each other. Because since they've split the First Order and Resistance off into their own factions, and with the Clone Wars factions coming out, you've got 4 factions in the game that are effectively fledgling factions that have only like 4 ships available to them right now. So not very many ships that even exist for these new factions right now, compared to the Scum and Villainy faction, the Empire, and the Rebellion, which have tons and tons of ships. And so it would basically give people, really skew things out if the Rebels had a million different ships to choose from in their list, and the Resistance only had 3, or 4 now with the A-Wing. But it wouldn't be balanced at all, because it would make people think, well, you know what, these new factions are terrible. So this is a way to kind of keep all of those factions mostly on par, because there's different categories of ships. There's the big ships, and then there's turreted ships, there's jousters, there's support ships and things like that. And not all these new factions have all of those different ship archetypes really mapped out yet. And so by limiting some of the ship archetypes that are available at least in this format, you're able to kind of keep all the factions balanced. And that otherwise you wouldn't be able to even bring the Clone Wars factions into the game, because they would be starting out with only 3 ships, and how is that going to compete against a faction that's got 14 ships or so? So, that's one of the other things, is it allows them to balance that versus themselves. I do want to talk about some cons now, because there are cons that go along with the Hyperspace format. Because it's a standard format, there's going to be a lot of events, leagues, tournaments, special events that are running this format. And that means that if you aren't a Hyperspace preferred player, like you don't want to play in the restricted format, you won't be able to play in these events. Or if you decide you do want to play in these events, you're going to be restricting your options. And I'm a player who does like options, so I can definitely understand that criticism of like, well, I can't use all of my stuff, and that's effectively a big part of it, because didn't we all not that long ago just buy a whole bunch of conversion kits, right? So they sold this game as second edition as a, hey, come, you can upgrade your entire collection, you won't lose anything. And then after everybody bought all their stuff and upgraded their entire collections, they say, oh, by the way, here's a Hyperspace format where you can't use any of that stuff, or you can't use 90% of the stuff in those conversion kits. So it was really, a lot of people are pretty bitter about that. I'm like, wait a second, you're making like the main format of this game. It's not, and you can argue or not whether or not you think it's the main format, because Extended and Hyperspace, I see both of them getting a lot of attention. Extended is the format that allows you to fly everything. Hyperspace is the restricted format that says, only like 4 ships per faction right now, or, a smaller subset. So I understand those players that are like, wait a second, you just had me buy all the stuff to convert my entire 1.0 collection into 2.0, and now you're telling me I can't use any of that stuff that I just upgraded. It's like they just got you again. First they had you buy all of your 1.0 stuff, and then told you, oh, you can't use your 1.0 stuff because 2.0 is a thing now. Granted, they didn't tell you couldn't. Sure, you can still use 1.0. Good luck finding anybody who still plays 1.0, right? And now it's like, oh, okay, all right, I spent the money, take my money, I upgraded everything to 2.0. And they're like, sure, you can still play Extended. Good luck finding a tournament that isn't running Standard. But in this case, there are still a lot of extended events that are happening. So both options are viable, but the criticism is most of the higher level events may end up running Hyperspace at some point, which will effectively lock people out of some of their collection. And any resistance to that at all is seen as a problem for some people, because people want full use of their entire collections, and even having one event would be too much for some people if it were standard only. So I see that criticism, and I understand it. I'm not saying it's entirely accurate, because I'm all in favor of having different limited events. I usually just don't go to them. That's me. Like when I'm going to play in an event, I usually want to have the availability of the entirety of my collection. I'm not personally a big fan of limited list building tournaments. Like they used to have small ship only tournaments for X-Wing, and I would never go to them because even if I only wanted to fly small ships, I still want to fly against everything that's out there, and I don't want to have some kind of false confidence in my list because I never faced a Millennium Falcon, right? So I'm not a fan of those limited formats, but I understand it. And one of the other real criticisms, your favorite ship may not be in there. Like my favorite ship is the B-Wing. Currently, that's not in standard, so I can't even fly my favorite ship. That's one of the reasons I haven't really been playing a whole lot of X-Wing lately, too. Once the Clone Wars comes out, though, I think this is going to fix a lot of it because all of the Clone Wars stuff should be hyperspace legal. Granted, I say should be because there's certain things, like they went ahead and let all the First Order stuff in. Minus one card. There was one card that was like, you know what, this card is a little too powerful. It's not hyperspace legal. And so if you look at actually the points listing on ffg.com, they have a printout, a PDF of all of the points. It'll also has a column that shows you what's hyperspace legal and what's not hyperspace legal. And there you'll find like there's only one First Order card that's not hyperspace legal. And that's where also where you'll find this came in the conversion kits, for example, where the Millennium Falcon is, and that one is hyperspace legal. So you can get the legality of everything in there, but it's also built into the squad builder, and a lot of the community squad builders will also do the same thing. And I think the last real criticism is that this may just be a push to promote the sales of existing 2.0 products. If they're saying, hey, only thing you can run is X-Wings and Y-Wings, and if you're a Rebel player with your conversion kit, I'm like, well, I only have one X-Wing and only have one Y-Wing. I don't want to fly, all this other stuff. I guess I'll have to go ahead and buy, some of this other product. I guess I need to buy another Y-Wing because I don't have enough to even fly a hyperspace list, So I think there's definitely some of that. But I'm not sure if all of those criticisms are completely valid because I think the 2.0 product is selling. New players are coming into the game, so the 2.0 product is already going to move regardless. And also the products themselves are improved for the most part. There is some criticisms about like the Y-Wings redesign, about how that turret is unpainted and too big, and I definitely agree with that. But for the most part, like the X-Wings are improved. The new B-Wings that are coming out are going to be hugely improved. I don't need any more B-Wings, but I'll buy more B-Wings because the model itself is better, and I think that you earn my money if you improve the model. In some cases, the model's pretty much the same. Like a TIE fighter is just a TIE fighter. It's always going to be a TIE fighter. It's slightly different paint job, but it's barely even noticeable. So, and I'll be doing comparisons of all of these new expansions when they come out. I've already done all the ones for Wave 1 and Wave 2, and we'll do comparisons for Wave 3 and Wave 4, and however many more waves they want to make. I'll be covering them. So, overall, I think the hyperspace format is necessary. I think it's necessary to make the new factions work. I think it's necessary for balance and to keep X-Wing's competitive scene truly competitive and balanced. It's not my ideal format. I prefer extended. I prefer being able to play with the entirety of my collection. But at the same time, I'm more of a casual player for X-Wing than a tournament player. I don't do that many X-Wing tournaments. But I'm not insensitive to the needs of people who want balanced tournaments and a balanced competitive meta. And I think that's what Hyperspace can do for you. I just would caution the community as a whole to make sure you're paying attention to both Hyperspace and Extended. The fear is that Hyperspace is going to take over and Extended will never see support. And that is my concern because I prefer to play Extended rather than Hyperspace. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to click that subscribe button and click that bell so you can get notified when new content comes out. There is still time to enter that giveaway. You can also check out Crabbok.com. Big thanks to my patrons on Patreon. You guys definitely make this all possible. I want to thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a great day.